So let's move on to the Florida game. So Alabama goes to Gainesville on Tuesday night, and it's going to be an incredibly, incredibly tough game. Florida beat Auburn in Gainesville earlier this year. They beat them pretty decently. It was Auburn. Auburn hasn't won there in quite a few years. Gainesville is not an easy place to play, and in Coleman Coliseum, Florida took Alabama to overtime. Alabama ends up winning by 5 in overtime, but Florida had 5 guys in double figures. I'm looking here at the stats. Clayton has 27. Poland and Richard both have 17. Samuel has 14. Condon has 10. Florida was able to score on Alabama seemingly at will. There were many moments in that game that Zion Poland and Walker Clayton were kind of hitting whatever shot they wanted. They end up missing some shots, but they made a ton of shots. Clayton ends up hitting 4 threes. Looks like Poland hits 1. Richard hits 3. Condon hits another. So, Florida just does a pretty good job shooting. One of the places that scared me in that original Florida game was rebounding because of how badly Alabama had gotten destroyed by A&M on the offensive glass. Florida is the number 3 offensive rebounding team. But prior to that game, they were number 2 just behind A&M. They're still currently number 3 in the country. And Alabama ended up out offensive rebounding Florida in game 1. It was not something that I expected, but it was a key in the game. Florida ends up getting 17 offensive and 27 defensive rebounds, whereas Alabama gets 21 and 33. So Alabama gets 54 to Florida's 44. That's not something I expected. In my opinion, that's something that Alabama is going to need to continue to do in this game against Florida in Gainesville. They're going to have to be tough. They're going to have to rebound at that level if you want to beat Florida on their home court. Typically, in an opponent's stadium, you may shoot worse. They may shoot better than averages. And from a rebounding perspective, there's often a level of physicality and additional effort that happens on somebody's home court. It's just the way that basketball is. That's something that you have to look at for this game, because if that rebounding number goes in Florida's favor, the odds of Florida winning go up with it. Alabama takes it to overtime, ends up winning in overtime, but they beat Florida by 10 rebounds. Florida was the better rebounding team, so in my mind, Alabama had what was an incredible rebounding performance just to go to overtime and end up winning the game. So that scares me a little bit in this game. One thing that was huge in game 1 is Grant Nelson had his best game in Alabama. He ends up going 8 for 11 from 2, hit a 3, 8 rebounds, 6 blocks, got 22 points, played 37 minutes. That was, in my opinion, one of Grant Nelson's best games at Alabama on an offensive and defensive standpoint. He's going to have another big game. We're going to need him down low. The guys who, did a really good job in game 1, Samuel and Condon, combined for 24 points at 6'10 and 6'11. So Grant Nelson, Nick Pringle, they're both going to have big games. Another guy is Micah Handleglin. He had 9 offensive rebounds in game 1. At 7-1, he bullied us on the offensive glass. Alabama does win the offensive rebound battle. However, if we don't get the 21 that we get in this coming game, the way to still be able to beat Florida in the rebounding battle is not let Micah get the number of rebounds he got in game 1. Micah really manhandled us in game 1. He ends up getting 13 of their rebounds. So that's something really just to keep an eye on, is how is Alabama doing keeping him off the offensive glass? Because no other person on their team got more than 2 offensive rebounds. Aaron Estrada ends up getting 5 offensive rebounds for us. Ryling gets 4. So Alabama did a good job getting offensive rebounds themselves, but they give up 9 to a single guy. So that's something we're really going to have to keep an eye on in this game. Florida did a pretty good job on Alabama shooting the 3 last game. They end up letting us only go 8 for 32. So Alabama doesn't have their best shooting night. If you'll remember that Florida game, Alabama shot very poorly in game one, in the first half, but ends up shooting much better in the second half. Florida is a team that does a little bit better job running you off the 3-point line, although the speed at which they play allows you to still get off threes. So I would expect Alabama still gets off 30 plus threes in this game just due to the speed of the game. This is a game that does fit Alabama's style. This is going to be a very, very up and down game. It was in game one. I fully expect there to be, 75 plus possessions. This is going to be a very fast game with the way the offenses are played. I hope that Alabama's defensive effort and intensity that you saw in this Tennessee game was not just because it was in Coleman Coliseum. I hope that is Alabama being embarrassed by what happened against Kentucky, not enjoying what happened in Oxford at the beginning of that game, and being locked in on the defensive end, and not just because the crowd was behind them. If that's the case and Alabama plays defense at the level that they did against Tennessee, Alabama has a good chance of winning this game. However, if Alabama comes out flat in the first half, if Alabama doesn't defend at the level that they're capable of, if Alabama lets Florida get into a shooting streak and into a groove on offense, this could be a very, very long game in Gainesville. This is a game that I personally have had circled ever since game one. I had it circled prior to game one, but after game one, it scared me even more. And this is a game that, quite frankly, Alabama absolutely has to have. The SEC title, as Nate puts it, is not in our hands. We're going to need some help. Alabama will not win the SEC title or a share of the SEC title if Tennessee wins out. However, if Tennessee drops a game and Alabama wins out, we do win a share of the title. So, with that being said, Alabama has to win out if they want any chance or any possibility at winning the SEC title or a share of the SEC title. That starts with winning this game in Gainesville. I'm a little concerned by how the road games have been here recently. Alabama played poorly in the first half against Ole Miss. Alabama looked terrible at Kentucky, looked bad at Tennessee. Kentucky, Auburn, and Tennessee, all top 25 teams. Florida is currently sitting at 31st in KenPom. They're right around that top 30 range. Currently, Alabama only has one top 30 win on the road in KenPom, and it was at Mississippi State. So this is a game that if Alabama wants to compete for the conference and wants to be able to show that they can, win and win on the road, that they have to win. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to make shots, and they're going to have to defend at a high level if that's even going to be possible. So we have a lot ahead of us. I'm very curious how this game goes. I think this is going to come down to rebounding. This is going to come down to three-point shooting, and this is going to come down to how well Alabama can defend. If Alabama can rebound and defend near to the level that they did in this Tennessee game and make some additional shots, I think that Alabama has an okay shot at winning this game. Although playing in Gainesville with this offense does scare me. I'm not sure what to expect, and quite frankly, due to the way that Alabama has played on the road on offense, this is a game that is really going to show the maturity of the team, and do they have what it takes to compete in March and to compete for a title in the SEC and making a run in March. So we have a lot ahead of us. I'm very curious how this game goes. If you're curious and